Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and I'm going to be sharing with you Chapter 12 of Volume 1. We use this text, Developing a Life Practice, the Path That Leads to Enlightenment, for our text of this program. And we're in Chapter 12, which is Volume 1, Chapter 12. And this chapter is titled, Craving is the Problem, What is the Solution? Here we're going to revisit the Four Noble Truths, because throughout the program I've already taught the Four Noble Truths twice, but this is a third time because it's so important to verify the teachings and deeply soak them in so that you can establish right view. With the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths, you're going to understand the problem in the unenlightened mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to understanding what is really plaguing the unenlightened mind and how to solve it and actually get to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy that is the enlightened mind. So if you've already been studying with me for a while, this can be a really good refresher for you to really soak it into the mind. And we're going to explore some other things as well besides the three universal truths and Four Noble Truths. But if you've recently started learning with me, this is an ideal time to be able to start understanding the very beginning of the path to enlightenment, because what I'm going to be sharing today is the very first teaching that the Buddha shared during his lifetime with brand new students. This is going to help you establish right view and have this breakthrough to finally understanding what's causing these discontent feelings so that you can actually eliminate them. Without understanding what's causing them, you wouldn't actually be able to eliminate them. So today you're going to be able to finally have this important breakthrough where you see with clarity and in a way that you can independently verify what is causing these discontent feelings. So welcome to all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you've been joining regularly. Nice to see you all joining our class today. I start our class with a meditation to be able to help you guys to learn meditation, and then even it helps you during the class because it helps to clear out your mind so that you're able to retain the teachings more readily throughout the class. So if you'd like to join for meditation, the way I do this is I start with chanting. That helps us to ease into the meditation. There isn't anything mystical or magical with this. It's not a rite or ritual or ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. It really just helps to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, but we don't need to do that anymore. We have books and videos and podcasts and audiobooks and all these kinds of things. So after the chanting, then I'll provide some guidance to help you in your meditation practice. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet and we'll all be meditating together. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and that's where I'll actually start the class of helping you to understand Chapter 12, which is helping you to penetrate into understanding what the problem is in the mind and the solution. So if you'd like to join for meditation, you might take a position seated on the floor or in a chair or anything like this. There's actually 4 positions to meditate in, but oftentimes students are learning and practicing in the seated position just to get started. So I'm going to start with the chanting, and if you'd like to join along, you're more than welcome to. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano โตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body, hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. There's no need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. ระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะขวาพุทธังมะขวันหังอภิวาเทมิ สวากขาโตมะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรภูริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you'd like to slowly make your way out of meditation, once again, I'd like to welcome all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. This is a wonderful class for you to be in. This is an absolute best time to be able to get on the path to enlightenment. It's so important to learn the teachings that I'm going to be sharing with you today. And that's why in this program, we revisit this multiple times throughout the program. And for anybody who's just starting on the path, this is an ideal class for you because you're going to be learning the three universal truths, which are building blocks, to be able to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. These are the first teachings that you would learn when you're studying with Gotama Buddha himself, that he would teach you to how to establish right view through learning the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths explains the problem, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to finally understanding what's causing the anger and sadness, the frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, all the discontent feelings that are in the mind. I'm going to be explaining that to you through the Four Noble Truths, and I'm going to be teaching it to you in a way that you can independently verify it. Because keep in mind that the teachings of the Buddha, they're not a bunch of beliefs of things that you believe and then hope something good happens when you die. It's also not a bunch of rules or commandments of if everybody follows these rules, then the world will become a peaceful place. Instead, the Buddha is teaching you the way the world is. And by understanding the way the world is through these truths, your mind can awaken to this wisdom to now navigate the world more readily. Because when you're experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, this is the mind struggling and having difficulties because it's living in a world that it doesn't understand. It lacks wisdom. And when the mind lacks wisdom, it will tend to make unwise decisions, producing unwholesome results. But when you can awaken awaken to the wisdom of these natural laws, then you can navigate the world more readily without these struggles and difficulties, namely the anger, the sadness, and the frustration. So slowly but surely, what an individual is doing on the path to enlightenment is gradually awakening to the wisdom of the natural laws of existence. Sure, there's meditation to eliminate pollutions of the mind and all these other teachings that you need to be able to learn and grow and develop. But the number one goal in order to learn, grow, and develop, to understand the teachings, is to cultivate wisdom. So as I'm sharing with you today and we're having this discussion, it's important that you don't believe anything that I'm sharing with you. If you just believed what I'm sharing with you, it's not actually going to lead to wisdom, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it. But when you can learn something, when you can examine it and investigate it, and then you can reflect on it to independently verify it, and then you can practice it in order to integrate it into your life and actually create real transformation in the mind and in your life, this is where you'll experience the real results. So as we're talking today, it's important to listen with eager ears. The Buddha taught this during his lifetime, that learning with eager ears is to pay attention, right? If you're listening to a YouTube video or surfing the internet or looking at your phone or doing any number of these other things, if you're able to put those things aside and just focus on the teachings, this is listening with eager ears so that you can understand the meaning of the teachings and integrate them into your life by investigating them, reflecting on them to verify them, and practice them. Because what I'm going to teach you today is that it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings. And you're going to need to be able to independently verify this, because the way that the unenlightened mind tends to think with its lack of wisdom is that other people are causing you to be angry and frustrated and agitated. And as long as you kept thinking this way, you would continue to stay stuck in this continuous cycle of experiencing discontentedness over and over and over and over again. So when you have the wisdom to understand what's causing these feelings, and you can apply the solutions, which I'm going to talk with you about today as well, then you can actually experience real results and real improvements. And this is what it means to awaken to the natural laws, is that you're gaining wisdom of these natural laws. And we did exactly the same thing with the natural law of gravity, that as we were growing up, we struggled and have difficulties with this natural law because it was affecting us whether we were aware of it or not. And when we lacked wisdom of that natural law, we made unwise decisions. We fell down, we hit our head, we broke our toys, we had all kinds of difficulties with it. So what you did with the natural law of gravity is you gradually, slowly learned. When you were 3 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, you were gradually learning about this natural law of gravity. And now you might say that you're fully awake to the natural law of gravity. And this is why you don't fall down and break toys and things like this. Of course, things still break from time to time, but nonetheless, it's not like when we were 3 years old. It's not like that, right? That we were just having so many difficulties with the natural law of gravity because we didn't understand it. But now we got to the point where we can climb a ladder, we can ride a bicycle, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we're fully awake to this natural law. We don't struggle and have difficulties with it anymore. We're still affected by it and we still experience an occasional mishap here and there, but we don't struggle and have difficulties with it anymore. And you can do the same thing with these natural laws that the Buddha taught. So as we go today, you're going to potentially need to ask questions. So you can ask any and all questions that you like by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your mic, and ask any and all questions that you like. So the first thing to start to understand as we are embarking on this journey to understand the Four Noble Truths is to understand the three universal truths. They're referred to as the three universal truths in the Four Noble Truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true. Other people know that they're true. But in order for you to benefit, you need to know that they're true. And that's why you're interested in listening with eager ears and independently verifying what it is that I share with you. So I'm going to walk you through how to intellectually learn these teachings, how to reflect on them, and then how to practice them. So with the universal truth of impermanence, this is where you're learning about conditioned and unconditioned objects. That conditioned objects, they arise, they change, and they fade away. This is impermanence, that they are not permanent, that they're constantly changing. And everything around you, all the material objects, are all impermanent. Anything you see, hear, smell, any flavors that you taste, any physical objects that come in contact with the body, and any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind. These are all conditioned objects. They arise, they change, and they fade away. This is the universal truth of impermanence. There is something called unconditioned objects. Enlightenment itself is an unconditioned object, and the universal truths and all the other natural laws that the Buddha taught, these are unconditioned objects, that they don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away because they are unconditioned. There's nothing that actually causes them to arise, so therefore they don't change and they don't fade away. They are unconditioned. This is enlightenment itself is an unconditioned object, and the natural laws of existence are an unconditioned object. And this is why the teachings of the Buddha are just as applicable today as they were 2,500 years ago. Because what the Buddha taught is he described the natural laws of existence, and they don't change. So his teachings are timeless. What he explained 2,500 years ago is just as applicable today as it was back then. Now, people's memories of these teachings, the books and people's writings of these teachings, that's impermanent because they're conditioned objects. They're material possessions, material things. But the natural laws themselves, they haven't changed. So when you understand the teachings, you can see that his teachings are timeless. But everything around you is impermanent. It will arise, it will change, and it will fade away. They're constantly changing. So this is a bit of the intellectual learning on the universal truth of impermanence. But now it's time to reflect on this so that you can independently verify whether it's true or whether it's false. So you take something like the physical body, something that you know is in the world, or any other object around you, and you ask yourself, is it permanent or is it impermanent? Because if this is a universal truth, and the Buddha is describing a universal truth that applies everywhere in the world, you should be able to look around the world and independently verify whether this is true or false. Because like I mentioned with belief, you don't know whether that's true or false because you're just believing it. Either you convinced yourself to believe it or somebody else convinced you to believe it. But if you can get to wisdom and know the truth, then you can gradually awaken to these natural laws and you can understand the world around you. So ask yourself, is this physical body permanent, meaning it never changes? Or is this body impermanent, meaning it's experiencing constant change? Well, of course, if you look at the body, you can tell that it's constantly changing, that from the time of conception, this body has been constantly changing, right? That there's certain growth that we experience in terms of our hair is growing and then we cut it and it grows some more. That is impermanence. It's constantly changing. We grow teeth in, and then they fall out. That is impermanent. Then we grow in more teeth, and then those teeth get cavities. That's constant change. When you look in the mirror, your facial complexion changes. The color of your skin might change. You might experience moles appearing here and there, pimples, wrinkles, gray hair. You might be losing your hair, right? These are all things that happen with the physical body. We might get a little fat here and there, maybe some of us more than others, right? We get a little bit of fat. This is all impermanence, that the body's constantly changing, okay? You can look at other things like your relationships. Ask yourself, do you have exactly the same people in your life and you'll have those exact same people in your life for the rest of your life? Or are your relationships impermanent, meaning that people have been coming and going in and out of your life? Because if your relationships are permanent and you've had exactly the same people in your life throughout your whole life, this isn't a universal truth. But if you look at your life and you look at people coming and going and you've had different relationships coming and going all throughout your life, then you can see that your relationships are impermanent as well. And then you can look at something like your bank account. Ask yourself, is your bank account permanent or is it impermanent? Does your bank account stay exactly the same balance all the time? Or does your bank account balance go up and down, up and down, up and down, right? Some of us goes down, down, down. Some of us goes up, 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 right? So you can look at your bank account and you can see the impermanence there. You can look at the weather And see, the weather is impermanent, right? The weather, in terms of sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's raining, sometimes it might be snowing or sleeting, depending on where you're at. There's all kinds of different weather events that are happening, and this is constant change. So you can look around the world and see and verify that, yes, this is indeed a universal truth. And if you haven't been able to do that in our short time here, be sure to do that. Take your time to walk around the world and independently verify this. Walk down the street, and when you see a crack in the sidewalk, that is impermanence. When you look at the trees and you see green leaves in the trees and you see brown leaves on the ground, this is impermanence. There's constant change. When you're walking down the street and it's quite quiet, but then you hear a sound, maybe a dog barking or a car going past, this is impermanence, right? You can look around the world and see constant change that is constantly happening. If you're walking down the street and maybe the wind is blowing and then it stops, that is change, that is impermanence. So you're going to need to deeply soak this into the mind so that you can understand that everything around you is impermanent. And this is an important building block for when we get to the Four Noble Truths. Then we have the second universal truth. This universal truth is explaining the unenlightened mind. The Buddha is helping you to understand what you experience in the unenlightened mind. This is actually the problem that is in the unenlightened mind, is that it experiences discontentedness. These are conditioned feelings. Now, if you've been studying the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might hear this referred to as suffering. I don't use this word because, in my opinion, it doesn't accurately reflect what it is that the Buddha was teaching when he was talking about this important universal truth. So I'm going to explain to you what the Buddha taught, and then I'm going to circle back and help you understand why I don't use the word suffering, so that way you can fully understand what this universal truth is. So in the original teachings in the Pali language, the word dukkha is being used. That's what is documented as what the Buddha described this particular universal truth as, using the word dukkha. And when he describes dukkha, he explains it as a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a feeling that is neither painful nor pleasant. Pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. Painful feelings are things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. Then there's neither painful nor pleasant. And for me, I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category. But something like shyness, you could surely say that that's neither painful nor pleasant. Or if someone you didn't know came and sat really close to you on public transportation and your body was touching their body, you'd probably say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. The mind is kind of dissatisfied or experiencing unsatisfactoriness, right? So this universal truth is explaining the full range of feelings and emotions that you experience in the unenlightened state. That the mind experiences these pleasant feelings, and then these painful feelings, and these neither painful nor pleasant feelings. And these are what's called conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, the mind is going to experience these feelings. So maybe if you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside, you get so excited, you get so happy. And this is a conditioned feeling. This is conditional happiness, that based on the condition of the sun, the mind is now happy, right? So now you go take a shower and you come out and you see it's raining. Well, now that happiness has faded away, and now the painful feelings might arise, where you're now frustrated or agitated or annoyed, right? This is because of the conditional feeling of happiness was not permanent, because it was based on some condition. So it arose, it changed, and it faded away. And I'm going to explain to you what's actually causing this when we get to the Four Noble Truths. So an enlightened being doesn't experience this. They don't experience the up and down emotions of a unenlightened being, because their mind isn't forming conditioned feelings, that their mind has been transformed to no longer experience conditioned feelings, that they're experiencing unconditioned mental qualities. So for an enlightened being, they're beyond the pleasure and pain and the neither pain nor pleasure. Their mind is beyond that when they wake up in the morning, they're already happy. They're already joyful before they ever even opened their eyes, before they even looked out to see that the sun is out there. They're experiencing unconditioned happiness. And then when they see it's happy, it's like, sweet, excellent. We're going to go outside. We're going to have fun. Let me go take a shower. We're going to go hiking today and have a good time outside. So then when you take a shower as an enlightened being and you come outside and you see it's raining, it's like, all right, well, it's raining, so let's do something else. Let's go to the mall. Let's invite some friends over and have some dinner. Or maybe let's just stay home and read a book, right? You're not going to base your inner feelings of happiness on the sun. So therefore, when that changes, you're not going to experience the sadness either. So as long as you allow the mind to have this temporary pleasant feeling of happiness and excitement that is conditional, then it's going to end up in the painful feelings as well. So these conditional feelings is the problem in the unenlightened mind, that the mind's going up and down and up and down. Of course, there's periods of time of calm and peace here and there, but it's only a matter of time before the unenlightened mind becomes agitated or annoyed or frustrated or some other discontent feeling based on these conditions that are causing it, which I'm going to explain to you when we get to the Four Noble Truths. So this is explaining the unenlightened mind. And you can independently verify that this is true because you know that your mind is currently unenlightened. And because this is explaining the unenlightened mind, you can look at all the full range of feelings and emotions that you experience and ask yourself, does this accurately describe that? So does your mind experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant? And are these conditional feelings? That meaning that your mind is experiencing some conditional thing that now the mind experiences happiness, for example. And this is the reason why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, is because the mind is experiencing these conditioned feelings, that it's forming its inner feelings based on some condition. So some people refer to this as suffering. I don't refer to it as suffering because when you look at what the Buddha taught about these three feelings of pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, the suffering explains the painful feelings. When you're sad or angry or frustrated or any of those other painful feelings like stress and anxiety, you'd probably say you're suffering in that situation. But if you were really excited because your mom's coming to visit you this weekend, or you got a new job and you're so excited, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering in that situation. Or if you were in public transportation, like on an airplane or in a bus or a train, and somebody came and sat next to you and your body was touching their body when you're experiencing those neither painful nor pleasant feelings, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering when that person was sitting next to you. The mind's discontent, it's discontented, or it's experiencing discontentedness. That's what this particular universal truth is referring to. So if we use this word suffering, it's going to take you away from the full understanding of what the Buddha actually taught. You'd only be understanding 1/3 of what he was actually teaching. So that means you're missing 2/3 of his actual teaching. And if you're missing 2/3 of a teacher's teachings on an important topic like this, you're not going to be able to get to the ultimate goal of enlightenment. So by using the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness, it describes the full range of feelings and emotions that one experiences in the unenlightened state. So I would encourage you to use this whenever you hear other people talking about suffering, if you're around that, or if you're reading a book or something like that. If your mind can do the switch of discontent, discontented, or discontentedness, it'll bring your mind to the full understanding of what the Buddha was describing, which is essentially the unenlightened mind can only experience happiness when it gets what it wants. If this condition is met, and 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 this condition is met, then the mind will be happy. But when it doesn't get what it wants, it experiences these painful feelings. So I'm going to explain that to you as part of the Four Noble Truths, because when you see the Four Noble Truths, you can see that as your wants and expectations are growing, the amount of time that you can become happy and maintain your happiness becomes less and less and less and less. So that's going to be explained for you in the Four Noble Truths. But here you can independently verify that the unenlightened mind experiences all three of these feelings. And if you're having challenges with that, just let me know and I will help you. Then there's the universal truth of non-self. The universal truth of non-self is actually a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. The Buddha discovered 10 individual problems in the mind. This is referred to as the 10 fetters. This is the most detailed description that the Buddha shares of what is plaguing the unenlightened mind and keeping it trapped in the unenlightened state. They're referred to as fetters because in ancient times, if you were a prisoner, they put a fetter on your leg in order to keep you confined to a certain area. Nowadays, we just put prisoners in a jail cell or a prison cell. But in those days, it was just an open field, and they would put a fetter on your ankle. They would put a shackle and a chain and a ball around your ankle, and this would keep you confined to a certain area. So the Buddha describes the 10 fetters, or these pollutions, the taints, the defilements. He describes them as a fetter because it's keeping you trapped in the unenlightened state. And it's when you clear out these pollutions or these defilements that the mind can then awaken and experience the brightness and radiance that is the enlightened mind. It can perform optimally. Not only do you eliminate those discontent feelings, but you experience focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll notice your personal professional relationships are blossoming and that you're at ease. You'll notice you're not even in a bad mood anymore by the time you get to enlightenment because you've removed these pollutions out of the mind. So the very first pollution is called personal existence view. You're going to need to know all of these as you journey on the path to enlightenment, but just one thing at a time. You don't need to learn everything all in one day, right? So let's talk about the first fetter. And we're going to talk about this in a lot more detail when we get to chapter 16 in about 4 weeks, but I'll just introduce you to it now. What the first fetter of personal existence view is describing in this universal truth of non-self is the solution for, is that the mind has a certain amount of confusion or misunderstanding or misperception, a certain unknowing of true reality, that it's clinging to this body and holding on to this body, and it's clinging to this mind and holding on to this self-identity, thinking that this is who you are as a person. And now, if you're clinging to this self-image and you're clinging to this self-identity, the mind's going to experience discontentedness because of that. If you spilled spaghetti sauce on your clothing in a social situation or some chocolate ice cream, you might have experienced embarrassment. And this is because of the personal existence view, that the mind is clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And when the mind isn't being perceived the way it wants to be perceived, it's going to experience those painful feelings. But when the mind is experiencing the self-image being perceived in the world a certain way, it might experience those pleasant feelings, right? So this body is not you, it's not who you are, but the mind has this confusion or this delusion or this misunderstanding, thinking that this body is you. So not only if you spill something on your clothes will you experience embarrassment, but if you see a pimple or a mole or a wrinkle, or you see some gray hair, or you start losing the hair, you might look in the mirror and you might feel disgruntled or irritated or annoyed. Or if somebody compliments you about this body, you might get all these pleasant feelings. But then if somebody says something negative and degrading and disparaging about this physical body, you'll get these painful feelings. So the mind is experiencing discontentedness here because it's clinging to this self-image, wanting to be perceived in the world a certain way. And it thinks that this body is who you are. Then there's a certain self-identity that the mind can cling to around your culture, your ethnicity, your nationality, maybe your sexual orientation or your job or occupation. The mind can cling to this I am. I am American. I am Canadian. I am Spanish. I am Mexican. I am Brazilian, or I am a police officer. I am a Buddhist teacher. Any of this I am around culture, ethnicity, nationality, your sexual orientation, your job or an occupation, or any number of other things that the mind can cling to as your identity. And now your mind will get shaken up by these things. So for example, if you've ever been in a relationship where you were a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife, and you identified with I am a boyfriend or I am a girlfriend or I am a husband and I am a wife, one of these identities the mind was clinging to, when you were in a relationship and the identity was intact, you felt good, you felt whole, like I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend. But when the relationship was over and now you're experiencing this singleness, The mind doesn't identify that way. The mind identifies with, I am a boyfriend or I am a girlfriend. So now when you're not in a relationship anymore, the mind, experiencing discontentedness, thinks the way to solve that is to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. So you might have experienced this urge, this overwhelming urge to hurry up and get right back into another relationship when your relationship ended, so that you can reassume that identity of, I am a boyfriend, I'm a girlfriend, I'm a husband, I'm a wife, where in reality that doesn't solve the actual problem, because the problem is the personal existence view. It's the pollution of mind thinking that I am a boyfriend and identifying in that way. The same thing is happening with like a job or occupation. Say I was a police officer or something like this, and say that my mind identified with, I am a police officer. And maybe I'm doing this job for 10 or 15 or 20 years, but then I get injured or I get laid off, or maybe I retire or something like this. And now I don't feel whole. I feel like less of a person because I don't identify with, I am a police officer anymore. I'm not doing that. The mind was clinging to this identity, thinking that this is who you are as a person. And now when you're separated from that, the mind struggles and has difficulties in this situation. So not only is it your culture and ethnicity and sexual orientation and these other things, but even things like your job or occupation, your mind can cling to this. So as long as your mind is clinging to any particular identity, thinking that this is who you are, as soon as you cling to that, you're going to experience change. And now when you experience change, because of the universal truth of impermanence, you'll feel diminished. You'll feel lost. You'll feel like less of a person. You'll feel like you're not whole anymore. And there's actually people who come here to Thailand all the time in search of themselves. They're looking for their true self. They want to find their true self. And the thing is that there is no self. The mind is just on this never-ending quest to find yourself, when in reality there is no true self that exists. But somebody might come here to Thailand and they might spend a year or two, they might get a new job, they might find a new hobbies or activities, they might find new friends or things like this, but none of those things are you. So the person might feel better for 3 years, 5 years, or what have you, but if they cling to this as their identity or their self-image, when those things change, your relationships, your jobs, your occupations, your hobbies, when those things start changing, then you're right back where you started. You're discontent, you don't feel whole, you feel diminished, you feel like less of a person. So as soon as the mind grabs onto something and thinks that this is who you are, that's not permanent. So what the Buddha is teaching you in the universal truth of non-self is that there is no self. That this body isn't you, this mind isn't you, there isn't anything that can be identified as this is who you are. But the problem is that the mind's going to keep grasping, it's going to keep looking for a self. And this is where someone can go on this never-ending quest to keep looking for a self. The mind has been labeled since birth. Every single one of us has a label. We were given a certain name. My label was David. Right? And now we put certain character and personality behind that. We start clinging to this, thinking that this is who we are, and now we're shaken up by it. If you heard somebody say, all Americans are lovely and kind and friendly and warm and gentle, right? If you heard something like this, or Canadians, or people from the UK, or any thing that's your mind's holding on to, you would get these pleasant feelings. Or if someone says, wow, you look so beautiful in that shirt, that color of that shirt brings out the colors of your eyes. Your mind can get these pleasant feelings like, wow, they're talking about me because they're talking about this shirt. But then it's only a matter of time before someone says something negative and degrading. You can be at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody could be saying something negative and degrading and disparaging about the people that are from your country. Or say they're talking about your job or occupation. Say you're a lawyer and they're degrading and diminishing lawyers, or some other occupation that you have. And if you identify with that as who you are, your mind will be shaken up in that situation. And you can't control what other people say and what other people do. You can only control your own mind. But when this personal existence view is in the mind, you're not going to be able to control it. So the universal truth of non-self is helping you to see that this body is not you and that this mind is not you. But the mind's going to keep clinging to it. So now that you have understood this, perhaps to a certain degree intellectually, not everybody understands this one 100% intellectually when they first learn it. And that's why we're going to revisit this and really go into a lot of depth when we get to chapter 16, where we'll talk about the ego, because this is part of the ego. But if you're starting to understand this a bit intellectually, now we can start to reflect on it to independently verify whether it's true or it's false. The way that you do this is you think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adulthood, and then now. Think about yourself, your character, your personality, how you viewed yourself. Has that been constantly the same, or have you been viewing yourself differently from each one of these time frames? And most likely what you're going to say is, yes, I've been viewing myself differently. So there you can see there is no permanent self. Here's another way, is if your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, ask yourself, are you less of a person? Now you have one hand and one arm. Are you less of a person? And if your answer is no, that you aren't less of a person, then intellectually, your mind's understanding that this body is not you. Because if I asked you that question, are you less of a person? And you said, yes, I am less of a person. Then that means your mind thinks that this body is you, and that now because you have less of an arm, you are less of a person. But if you answer the question that when your arm's amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, you are not less of a person, then intellectually you understand that this body is not you. But this is where the confusion, the misunderstanding, the misperception of the unenlightened mind comes in when it has this pollution of personal existence view. In that in the moment when somebody says something negative or degrading about this body, you get frustrated and agitated or annoyed. Right now, sitting in a classroom, intellectually, you can understand that this body isn't you. But the mind has that confusion. So in the heat of the moment, when somebody says something agreeable or disagreeable about this body, then that's where your mind gets shaken up by it. And here's a third way that you can independently verify this, is sometimes I ask students to point to yourself. Where are you? And usually students will point either towards the torso or towards the head. And when you do that and you're pointing, you need to look at what it is that you're actually pointing to. If you're wearing a shirt, you're pointing to a shirt. That's what you're pointing to. So ask yourself, is this who you are, this shirt? If we define you as a person, are we going to define you as this shirt? If we held up this shirt and pointed to it, is that who you are? Is that me, this shirt that I'm wearing? Well, the answer is no, that's not who I am, right? Okay, so if I threw away the shirt and I pointed again and said, that's where I am, well, what are you pointing to? You're pointing to skin. So if we took the skin off and we held that up, is that who you are? That skin that you've got? Is that how we can define you, is through your skin? And that's what we can point to and say, that's you? Well, of course not. That's silly. That's not who you are. So let's throw that away, right? Okay, so where are you? And then someone might point again. Okay, we've got ribs, we've got muscle tissue, we've got organs, we've got fluid, we've got all these things in there, all these bits and pieces and parts, but none of that is you, right? So the mind in this confusion, this misunderstanding, this unknowing of true reality, it's going to keep grabbing on to the body and the mind, thinking that this is who you are. And what the Buddha is describing to you is that there is no self. And what this does is helps your mind to eliminate the clinging so that you're no longer holding on to the self-image or the self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. So that way, when you experience impermanence, you can reside peaceful. You can reside joyful. But if you cling to this body or this mind and wanting it to be permanent, when you experience impermanence with the body and the mind, which you will experience, you'll be shaken up by it. So I'm going to pause here and see what questions you guys might have before we move into the Four Noble Truths. You can ask the questions through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. So we've got some questions coming in here on Zoom. Steve is asking a question. A teaching that I've struggled with is non-self. I understand that there is no permanent self. Our bodies and memories change and we ultimately die. However, I've yet to understand that there is no self or me. We are all told not to be selfish, and it is good to be selfless. that part of letting go of self is understood. But if there is no me, who is asking this question? What's asking this question is the consciousness. There is a mind, and that is in existence, but that's not who you are. That's what the Buddha is explaining, that there is a body, there is a mind, and these two things have come together, and we refer to that as a person. But if the mind's clinging to any of these things, thinking that that is you, that's where the delusion is. That's where the misunderstanding. So there's a mind that's using the body in order to communicate. So right now, you see this body moving, you see these lips moving, you hear certain sound coming out of this body. So the mind is the boss and the body's the employee. The mind is using this employee in order to communicate and get some information out into the world. And now that body of yours, Steve, is using the ears in order to take that in so that the mind can now understand it. Right? So it's really like two consciousness talking to each other. But this consciousness isn't you. It's not who you are. It's just a consciousness. The mind can't cling to this permanently, because as long as the mind's clinging to it, then because it is impermanent and it's constantly changing, that's where you're going to experience the discontentedness. So by training your mind to understand that this mind is not you, the mind can reside more peaceful and more joyful. So while there is a mind, it is communicating. That's not who you are as a person. That's what the Buddha is teaching you. And if you're not understanding it 100%, that's okay, because it takes time to fully understand it. And that's why we have a more in-depth discussion on this in chapter 16. And there's even other courses and retreats where I go into it in even more detail, because oftentimes students need multiple conversations to understand it. Here's some more from Steve. He says, by the way, I do fully understand the problem with clinging to a self-image. I experienced this fully when I lost a job several years ago. Okay, perfect. So you understand the clinging. So what the Buddha is teaching you in the universal truth of non-self is how to eliminate the clinging, is to no longer see the body or the mind as who you are. He's not saying that you don't exist. He's not saying that there isn't a body, that there isn't a mind, because there's surely certain physical structures of the body here, and there is a consciousness that's here. It's in existence. But he's teaching you not to cling to this body or this mind, because then you're going to open yourself up to discontentedness. Okay, I'm going to check Facebook and YouTube. You're welcome, Steve. Pleased to help you. I'm going to check Facebook and YouTube and see if we have any questions there. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere there. So I'm going to move into the next piece, which is craving, desire, attachment. This is the building block that you need to now finally understand the Four Noble Truths. This is the last one, that you need to be able to understand what craving, desire, attachment is. Expectations, wants, holding, grasping, clinging, because we use these words in common language, and we tend to use these words in ways that is different than the meaning that we use in these teachings. And it's important to come to an understanding of these words through the way that we share them in the teachings of the Buddha. What craving, desire, attachment is a mental longing for something with a strong eagerness. The mind pulling in the direction of the objects of its affection. The mind has this unquenchable thirst, thinking the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases and chases and chases and chases. It thinks this external thing is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind is pulling towards something. It's not the object that is the craving, desire, attachment. So it's not the phone, or it's not the boyfriend or girlfriend, or it's not the car that is the craving. It's the mind longing and yearning for this. So if you've ever been walking through the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes and your mind was like, oh, yes, 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 I got to have those new shoes. Oh, this is going to be so perfect. They're so beautiful. Or a new piece of jewelry, or a new phone, or a new video game, or a new computer, or some other new thing. Typically with new things, the mind has this longing and yearning, but it can happen with other things too, that the mind is longing, yearning, and pulling towards this. If you're not seeing this, let me know and I'll help you to be able to understand it. This is the mind thinking some external thing is going to provide lasting satisfaction. And if I can just get that thing, everything in my life will be perfect. I'll feel whole again, right? So this is what the mind is having, which is this longing, yearning, this craving, this unquenchable thirst. So now we can explore the Four Noble Truths, and you can fully understand the problem, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. Because in the first noble truth, the Buddha is explaining the problem, that every unenlightened being is experiencing discontentedness. This is the problem, that the mind's going up and down and up and down. Those conditional feelings, the conditioned pleasant feelings, the conditional happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria, the conditional painful feelings, the sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, and those neither painful nor pleasant feelings too. The shyness or the uncomfortableness when you're sitting next to that person you don't know in public transportation. So that's the problem. The discontentedness is causing you problems because your mind's shaken up, and you can't make wise decisions when your mind's shaken up. And when you're making unwise decisions, it's producing unwholesome results or unwholesome dhamma in your life. Then the second noble truth is explaining the cause of this problem. The cause of discontentedness is our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. So I'm going to say this a few times, and I'm going to give you some examples. The discontentedness, those pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant, those conditioned feelings, which is the problem. This is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, the longing, the yearning, wanting things to be a certain way, because the mind wants things to be permanent, when in reality, everything around you is impermanent. So here's some examples. If you've been in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, when you guys first got together, it probably felt so great, right? It's the first time that you've met this person, perhaps. You guys are spending time together. They're showing you affection. Maybe they're inviting you out to a restaurant, to a movies. Maybe you're going to the park. You're having great conversations. You might even be having intimate contact from time to time. There's all this pleasantness with this new partner, this new boyfriend or girlfriend. And things couldn't be better during this period of time. But then slowly but surely over time, you start having all these expectations, all these wants, all these cravings, and they probably do too. They're probably craving for certain things to be a certain way. They're wanting things to be a certain way. And now there's this anger and sadness and frustration and other discontent feelings, stress and anxiety. And now for one reason or another, you guys decide to break up and the relationship's over. And now that's where the real frustration sets in, the potential real anger sets in. That's where the boredom and loneliness, and you're missing this person perhaps, right? You're regretting things. Maybe you're feeling shameful or guilty in this situation. The cause of this is not love. Oftentimes people think that because I love this person, love hurts, love is painful. Love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. That doesn't cause painful feelings. What's causing the painful feelings is the mind is craving permanence. It's wanting this relationship to be permanent, when in reality, it's impermanent. But the unenlightened mind doesn't have that wisdom to understand the universal truth of impermanence. And it doesn't understand craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the mind wanting and expecting things to be a certain way. And as long as the mind is craving permanence, it's not going to be able to get that because it lives in an impermanent world. So not only with boyfriend and girlfriend and husbands and wives does this occur, but if you've experienced the death of someone close to you, like grandma or grandpa or mom or dad or brothers and sisters, the mind oftentimes grieves during this situation, not because of the love. The love is your genuine interest in seeing this being be well. That doesn't cause painful feelings. What's causing the painful feelings is the mind is wanting grandma and grandpa to be alive permanently, or mom or dad or brothers and sisters. And as long as they're alive, the mind's getting what it wants. So therefore, it gets those pleasant feelings, the conditional pleasant feelings. But when it doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings, the anger, the sadness, the frustration, the grief, the sorrow, the misery, the despair, all those other feelings. The same thing happens in a wedding. If you've been to a wedding and grieved, or other people around you are grieving, this is the mind craving permanence. And now at this ceremony where brother or sister or someone else is going off into the world with a different person other than you, you might feel sad when they're going off into the world without you, because the mind's holding on, craving permanence, wanting this person to be permanent. Or if you ever went to university or college and your parents grieved or you grieved during that time, or if you can think back to kindergarten or first grade when you were going off to school, there was sadness, there was grief, there was despair, because the mind was holding on and thought mom and dad were permanent. And here we go off into the world all by ourselves, right? And into this school. The mind's holding on. It's not the love that's causing that. The mind is unawakened to the wisdom of the universal truth of impermanence, and it's craving permanence. Here's another example. Say you have a brand new car that is like the perfect car. This is the car you've always dreamed of. And you've saved up all your money and you went and purchased this brand new car. And now you drive off the lot and you feel so great driving this brand new car. And you park it at a store and you go inside and you come out and you see a scratch on your car. Oh my goodness, frustration might arise, right? You're just maybe so angry. How could somebody scratch my car? It's my perfect car, right? Well, it's not the scratch that's causing this. And it's not the person who caused the scratch. That's not what's causing the anger to arise. What's causing the anger or frustration to arise is the mind's craving permanence. It's wanting this car to look permanently beautiful, when in reality, it's not possible for this car to be permanently beautiful. The paint's going to fade. The upholstery is going to fade and get ripped and torn. This is the universal truth of impermanence. But as long as the mind's craving for this car to be permanently beautiful, you'll struggle when you're faced with impermanence. Now, it'd be wonderful if nobody ever scratched our car, but that's not the world we live in. We don't live in a permanent world, right? So we aspire to not scratch people's car. When we walk through the parking lot, we try not to harm other people's things. But because of impermanence, it's going to happen. There's going to be somebody pushing a cart. Maybe the wind comes and maybe the child can't control the cart, and boom, there you go. It scratches the car. But if you experience this impermanence and your mind is craving permanence, that's where you will experience the frustration and the anger and other things like this. So you can get liberated from these feelings when you understand what's actually causing them. Because when the painful feelings arise and the mind doesn't understand the second noble truth, what it will do is it will falsely attribute those painful feelings to somebody else. You will blame other people, or you will blame the situation. And when this is going on in the mind with the lack of wisdom, you will tend to push people away out of your life, or you will push the situation out of your life. This is called aversion, where the mind is pushing people or pushing a situation away. And the mind thinks it's solving the problem, but you can see that the mind hasn't solved the problem, and that's why you still get agitated or annoyed or frustrated over and over and over. Because that person is not the problem, when you push them away, it doesn't solve the problem. Now, they may have been doing something unwise, but that's not what's causing the anger in the mind. So pushing people away out of your life doesn't work. It's not going to solve your problem, because we've all done that a certain number of times. Or the second thing you might do when you lack the wisdom of the second noble truth is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards somebody through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. It's almost like the mind is trying to fear this other person into doing things your way. It's kind of like an animal showing your teeth or growling and roaring at this other human being. And you're not an animal, you're a human being. You can become a better and better human being. But without this wisdom, the mind will falsely attribute its painful feelings to somebody else. And this is where you might growl and roar and be harsh and bitter towards somebody else. Or you might put your expectations on somebody, trying to control them to do things your way. Because what the unenlightened mind thinks here, with its lack of wisdom, is if I can just get things my way, the world would be perfect and everything would be fine. So that's why it pushes people away, trying to get what it wants. Or it becomes bitter, harsh, and hostile towards people. And those people oftentimes will go out of your life and you'll end up with broken relationships. But that doesn't solve the problem, because when you're bitter, harsh, and hostile to people, because they're going out of your life, or even if they choose to do what you want, it's only temporary. Or if you put your expectations on people and try to control them, that's only temporary, because you can't control 8 billion people. You can't control 8 billion people in the world to do things your way. So it's like the mind is stuck it's in this constant cycle of blaming other people for the feelings that it experiences, and therefore it can't get the wisdom of how to train itself to now get liberated and free from these feelings. So this second noble truth is bringing to your awareness that your mind is causing these discontent feelings, that it's your own mind. It's craving, desire, attachment. If you have right view and you establish right view, that is to understand that your own mind is causing its discontentedness. If you have wrong view, this is the mind blaming other people and thinking something external is causing these feelings. So as long as you have wrong view, you can't fix your problem because you're not looking at the right area for what is causing the problem. But when you establish right view and you understand what's actually causing the problem, then you can apply the tools and techniques to fix the problem. But if you don't know what's causing it, you won't be able to fix it. So here with the second noble truth, you can independently verify this, that it's your mind that's causing the discontent feelings through craving, desire, attachment. You can look at a recent time. Your mind has been discontent, whether it's anger or frustration or some other discontent feeling, even the happiness and excitement. You can see that there's some craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning in the mind. And when the mind got what it wanted, it got pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation. But when the mind didn't get what it wanted, it got angry or frustrated or sad or some other discontent feeling. So you can take a moment and look at this situation, either this morning or yesterday or last week, where the mind was upset and it was angry or annoyed. And in that situation, not only may you have been blaming other people, but you might have been adamantly arguing with somebody, trying to convince them that what they were doing was wrong and they had to change their behavior. Otherwise, you're going to keep getting angry. You might have felt justified in your anger. But every single time that your mind has experienced discontentedness, it's all being caused by craving, desire, attachment. And you need to be able to independently verify that wisdom. And if you don't see that truth, let me know and I will help you to understand it. Because the third noble truth is helping you to understand that you can eliminate the discontentedness by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If the cause of discontentedness is craving, desire, attachment, then the way to eliminate it is to eliminate the cause. The cause is craving, desire, attachment. So if you eliminate the cause of discontentedness, you eliminate discontentedness. This is why you can get to enlightenment. If it was everybody else that was causing you to be discontent, you'd never be able to fix the problem because there's 8 billion people in the world. But the reason why the Buddha could get to enlightenment and the reason why you can get to enlightenment is because it's your own mind that's causing this. You don't have to train 8 billion people. You only need to train one. You only need to train one mind. And that's going to be challenging enough. And I think you know what that mind is. You need to train this mind, right? So if you can eliminate your craving, desire, attachment, you'll eliminate your discontentedness. And that's what the Buddha is giving you in the fourth noble truth. He's giving you the complete, perfect plan of exactly how to eliminate this discontentedness. The path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. That's the complete, perfect plan that's going to lead to the complete elimination of your discontentedness. And I taught this back at the beginning of the group learning program. It's 8 individual steps, which starts with right view. And if you haven't learned this yet, it was recorded. You can go to our YouTube channel and there's a playlist there for the group learning program. And you'll be able to see all the videos for the entire program. And just slowly but surely, you can watch those videos and you can learn the Eightfold Path, because at the very beginning of this program I did a 3-part series where I went through each one of these sections, the wisdom section, moral conduct section, and mental discipline section, explaining it to you and teaching you how to independently verify it and how to practice it. So with right view, when you establish right view, you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings. And you can learn it intellectually, you can reflect on it to independently verify it, and now you can practice right view. The way you practice right view is that now and forever, whenever your mind is experiencing discontentedness, rather than look around for who to blame, is look internally, look inward, and try to figure out what are the cravings, desires, attachments that are causing this. And this is what I'm going to teach you next week. Today's chapter is to really set you up for next week, that I'm going to teach you a new skill that's going to help you to be able to identify these cravings. Because so far, we've been talking about them generally in the last 3.5 months, and I've been giving you some solutions and some guidance to be able to understand various aspects of the path. But now I'm going to show you how to go in and independently verify these and identify the attachments, and then to almost go in and surgically remove these cravings, desires, attachments. But all of this is built on right view. So right view is the foundation. That's why it's at the bottom of this chart, because that's the foundation that everything else is built upon. Because if you didn't know that your mind was causing your own discontentedness, and you continue to believe that other people are causing you to be angry, why would you ever train your mind? Because it's everyone else that is the problem. It's everyone else that's causing these feelings. Why would you ever train your mind, right? So right view is so critical to be the very first step. The Buddha wisely put that as the first step, because it's establishing that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. So that's where you establish right view. But you'll need to know all these other steps as well, because there's various cravings that are potentials in the mind. Remember, it's not the object that is the craving. It's the mind longing and yearning. So in this particular chapter, I share a whole host of examples of potential cravings. For example, automobiles. The mind can be craving or longing and yearning for automobiles. You don't have to crave, you don't have to be attached to your automobile, but the mind can be attached to the automobile. And that's the example that I gave you. And if the mind is attached to automobiles, let's just say somebody collects umpteen number of different automobiles, and now every little scratch, every little mark, they're upset, they're frustrated. You'll notice that there's potential harmful effects, that there's excessive work, there can be excessive ego around the car, there can be lack of time to spend with those that are close to you, and there can be added pollution as a part of the mind craving and longing and yearning. The mind can be attached to children. If you have children, the mind can be holding on to them in having this craving, desire, attachment, where now you might be trying to control the child, right? And this can lead, as more and more people in the world have this, there can be disease, there can be famine, there can be a lack of resources. If you maybe had 1 or 2 children and now you want maybe 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, there can be this lack of resources in the family and excessive work. And you might even be trying to control your children and forcing them to do certain things, or punishing them instead of guiding them and helping them learn and gain wisdom. If the mind is attached, you might be harsh and bitter and hostile towards your children, and this is just damaging the relationship, and this is because of the attachment. You can have attachment to clothing and jewelry. You know, we can go through this whole list, but you can do this on your own in the chapter. There's all of these, and there's additional ones too. And this isn't a comprehensive list of all the attachments that are potential. I was just giving you some examples here in the chapter because it's going to set you up for chapter 13, where I'm going to teach you how to go in and identify what is the actual attachment, and then actually put together a plan to actually almost surgically remove it. So you can read this chapter and you can see the potential cravings. Again, it's not the object. The child isn't the attachment. It's the mind longing and yearning for it. The car isn't the attachment. It's the mind longing and yearning and having this desire. So as you understand what a craving, desire, attachment is and what the potentials are, then you can go in and almost surgically remove these from the mind. But there is certain generalized training that we employ in order to generally train the mind. And this is what I've been teaching you so far. And if you've been applying time, effort, energy, in practice towards developing these practices over the last 3.5 months, then you've been doing breathing mindfulness meditation, and maybe gradually building that up. And what you're doing is you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment from the mind. So when you're focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath and you cut that off and let it go, your mind coming back to the breath is being trained to let go, let go, let go. Because with craving, the mind's holding on. It's wanting things to be permanent, but you're training the mind to let that go and now come back. So if 10, 15, 20 times during your meditation you have to let go, this is really good for the mind. So the goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts during your meditation. The goal is to cultivate mindfulness or awareness of mind, to cultivate concentration or focus and clarity, so that now when your mind's focused on the breath and it moves off the breath, you can spot that sooner and sooner. So when you first start meditating, you usually aren't able to notice that the mind is moving off the breath. You might indulge in a thought for 2 or 3 minutes before you realize, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating, let me bring my mind back. Or you might notice a bombardment of thoughts during your meditation. This is very common. So if you're noticing these things, it's very normal. You're not bad at meditation. You shouldn't judge your meditation as being good or bad. Just understand any meditation is actually beneficial. But instead, what you're doing here is you're training the mind to notice your thoughts sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. Even an enlightened being has thoughts during meditation. So your goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts. But the difference is that an enlightened being experiences this peace and this stillness and this quietness in between their thoughts. Their mind is peaceful all the time, but when they're not having a thought, there's a period of time there where the mind's just still and quieted. And this is what an enlightened being is experiencing, where an unenlightened being will experience bombardment of thoughts. So you're going to experience that for a period of time as your mind is gradually awakening over time. So the breathing mindfulness meditation is a generalized solution that you're generally accumulating the benefits of this over a long-term consistent period of time. Your enlightenment isn't going to be determined whether you miss meditation today or not, because if you meditate 2 or 3 times a day, you'd be meditating about 60 times a month, right? Around that. But if you meditate 52 times a month or 50 times a month or 55 times a month, you'll still get to enlightenment. You'll string together multiple months and multiple years of meditation, and this is where the gradual improvement will be experienced. So meditation is highly important, but it wouldn't just be meditation that you need in order to get to enlightenment. You need the entire Eightfold Path, with meditation just being one part of that. The practice of generosity, where you're giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources, without any expectation of anything in return. This is also training your mind to let go. Because with craving, desire, attachment in the mind, it will become selfish. It will tend to hold on to things because it wants things to be permanent. We learned when we were children growing up that it's wise to share. We were probably taught to share our toys. We weren't necessarily taught why, right? So we probably forgot about that. And as we got older and we started accumulating material possessions, you might find it hard to share. You might be holding on to things and wanting things to be gratifying. But you'll need to get to a point where you're willing to share with others and not have any expectation of anything in return from them, even a thank you. If you're practicing generosity where you're holding the door at a store to let somebody in front of you, if you're standing there with the expectation that everybody should be saying thank you when they walk past you, your mind is still having an expectation. There's still a craving there that you want something for this action that you're doing. The mind hasn't fully let go. So you'd like to get to the point where you're practicing generosity, where you're not even expecting a thank you. You're just doing it because you know that it's enhancing the quality of your mind. In both of these practices, breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, frequency is more important than the amount or duration. So if it's a matter of 2 meditations for 15 minutes or 1 for only 30 minutes, do the 2 for 15. That's going to be more beneficial for you because the frequency, the mind's having to let go over a longer period of time. And the same thing with generosity. If it's a matter of spending 10 hours once a year helping an orphanage versus maybe helping once a week for about an hour, you would like to spend your time more frequently. Or if it's a matter of donating to a certain charitable organization once a year, maybe $500 or something, or whatever it is that you budget for those things, it's much better to do smaller amounts frequently, each day or each week, because the mind has to let go and let go and let go and let go. That frequency is going to be better for you. So you would like to be practicing to the point where you're regularly giving and sharing and you're regularly meditating. And this is the generalized training that you're doing. This is the solution. But then there's something I'm going to teach you next week to help you identify these cravings so that you can analyze the mind and you can cultivate this non-craving where you can almost go in and surgically remove it. So today's class was just to help you as a refresher for those of you guys that have studied this before. And anybody who's joined the group learning program since I taught the Four Noble Truths back several weeks ago, this is the opportunity for you to now get on board and start to understand what it is that the Buddha is teaching you. He's teaching you how to eliminate your discontent feelings, but you need to know the cause of them in order to actually eliminate them. So the solution here is the breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, but there's other things you need as well. Keep in mind, the problem of discontentedness is being caused by craving, desire, attachment, and start looking inward to figure out what it is that's actually causing this. And that's what I'm going to help you to develop next week. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So I have some questions here coming in from different folks. Let me see what we've got here. We've got one from Brent. Brent says, I've seen that attachment, clinging, are the problem. I've let go of so many of them, minus a few really sticky ones, that I'm starting to feel a little anchorless. I have complete faith in the Buddha's teachings and have personally verified many of his truths thanks to your guidance. I feel more peacefulness than I ever have, but I feel like I'm kind of stuck in this newly upside down world. I feel a little lost. This is normal, Brent. As your mind's awakening, you go through this period of time where you see all these people around you struggling. Your mind hasn't awoke to enlightenment yet, so it's still got these struggles. It's still got this ickiness. It still feels that things just aren't right yet, because the mind was so used to getting pleasant feelings, those temporary pleasant feelings, through its cravings, desires, attachments. It was used to that excitement and that conditional happiness. And now that the mind is scaling that back and shrinking back from that and eliminating the craving, the mind can almost feel somewhat dull and lethargic sometimes. It can feel lackluster and it can feel lost, because that's the mind swinging all the way to the other side. The mind hasn't fully let go of its cravings, desires, attachments yet. The mind hasn't brightened up yet. So you're going to need to brighten it up. What you do is you go around and you be cheerful and you be joyful with the people around you. Don't stay disgruntled or frustrated or things like this, or whatever it is that you're feeling, any kind of ickiness. You need to brighten it up in every situation. You go into 7-Eleven to buy a bottle of water. Good morning, ma'am. How are you? Or good morning, sir. How are you? How are you doing? Even if people are like, they're kind of grumpy and irritable, be cheerful. Brighten up the mind. This is what's going to bring you into that brightness and radiance of the enlightened mind. So the mind just hasn't fully let go yet. That's why it feels stuck and it feels icky. Okay, so here Miriam's asking, the more I detach or trying from the causes of discontentedness by letting go, dropping or leaving the conversation or whatever is happening, the more I feel like I don't care or isn't interested with what the other person is expressing or doing. One way, it's liberating, but also distancing or isolating. That said, I also appreciate being alone. I don't feel lonely at all, but I'm not sure it's the way to go. So again, this is the same thing like Brent. When you're practicing to a certain degree, and some of you have been practicing with me for a certain period of time, 6 months, a year, 2 years, your mind goes through this period of, wow, is this really the right choices? Because the mind was so used to getting that temporary pleasantness, but then also it ended up in the sadness and the anger and the frustration. So as your mind's peeling away from the craving, desire, attachment, you're not getting those conditional pleasant feelings anymore, but you're also not getting the unconditioned joy. It's not there yet. It's stuck, like Brent is talking about it. It's not truly stuck because it's impermanent, but the mind hasn't fully let go yet. So it can feel lackluster and it can feel like, gosh, did I really make the right choices to be giving up all these cravings? The answer is yes, that the mind has not yet fully brightened up. So that's what you need to do, is just stay dedicated and stay consistent and maintain your confidence with your diligence and dedication, and keep moving forward, practicing the Eightfold Path. And slowly but surely, as the mind more fully lets go, you'll notice that it's brightening up. And that's where you need to take effort using right effort to brighten up the mind. So as you're going around, whether it's at 7-Eleven, whether it's at a waiter at a restaurant, whether it's coworkers, the mind needs to be brightened up, and you need to take the effort to be able to do that. And that's where it'll come into that joy, and being sure that you maintain the breathing mindfulness meditation, the loving kindness meditation, and all these other practices that you're learning, like generosity and things like this. This is what's going to help the mind to fully awaken. So with you guys sharing this with me, this isn't something that I teach you guys, of course, but with you guys sharing this with me, it's a clear indication that your mind's headed towards awakening, but it's just not there yet. It's still got certain cravings and clinging that it's holding on to. So if you stay dedicated to what you're doing, you'll break through this, and you'll see on the other side of it, the mind will brighten up, and you need to take the right effort to be able to brighten it up. Okay, let's see what Julia's asking. Julia says, "Thank you, Teacher David. Sometimes I don't realize a craving until I'm deep in anger. I realize it's not fruitful yet. The ego wants to prove itself. What should I do? Try to breathe or meditate through it?" Yes, you can use that. Any time that your mind is feeling anger or frustrated or agitated or guilty or stress or anxiety, you can always turn to breathing mindfulness meditation, because that's going to help your mind to let go. So that's an option that you can always do. You can also redirect the mind, and I don't know if that's what you're doing there, but you can redirect your mind. And this reminds me that I didn't fully answer Miriam's question. Miriam was also talking about how walking away from situations, she feels like she doesn't care. This is where your mind needs to be able to see that walking away from a situation and redirecting the mind, as I'm sharing here with Julia as well, that doesn't mean you don't care. It's actually showing that you do care. One of the least caring things to do is to stay in an argument and continue to fight and bicker, because in this situation you're just damaging the relationship. One of the most loving and kind things that you can do is walk away from an argument. But the mind, with its lack of wisdom and having not experienced this before, it might feel that there's a lack of care if you associate care with being in that argument and feeling that rage and anger and things like that. But the most loving, kind, and compassionate thing you could ever do is value your relationship so much that, as hard as it is to walk away from an argument, that you prioritize that and realize that that's the best thing. And as you do that several times, more and more you will see that your relationship improves. There's a recent student who, she's been studying with me for almost a year, and she was having a lot of difficulties with her husband and having anger. Of course, it was her attachment and craving that was causing this. And I had taught her multiple times to just walk away, and she was having difficulties doing that because of her attachment. But eventually she got to the point where she was able to walk away, and it wasn't more than about 3 or 4 or 5 times that she was doing that it got easier and easier for her. And initially her husband got more angry when she walked away, because of course he's attached too, right? But now she's at the point where she's done this enough time where she's walked away, that now even her husband is starting to do it, realizing that it's beneficial and realizing that it's helpful. The most uncaring thing you could do is sit there and argue and bitter and be hostile with each other. But it takes a lot of loving kindness. It takes a lot of commitment to the relationship to choose to walk away and let the mind let go. And that's what you would like to do whenever this anger is arising, is redirect the mind. Staying in that situation, it's the wrong time to talk. It's not the proper time to talk. And you're just going to notice that there's more and more difficulties and struggles and problems that are going to result as part of arguing. So the most caring thing you can do is walk away. There's more here from Julie as well. She says, "Also, I realize that I may be addicted to online shopping. I feel overwhelmed by the choices. Even when I don't buy anything, I am obsessed with getting it right or perfect. How do I overcome perfectionism? I think it is another craving. Thank you again. You have brought a lot of positive changes in my life by introducing Buddhist teachings. Okay, so what you need to do, Julia, is continue to do the Eightfold Path. Right now, you're very early in learning, so this is great that you're seeing some progress and some improvements, because it's only been about 3.5 months or so. Is you're going to need to stay dedicated to the Eightfold Path, including the breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and the generosity. Keep doing that. But next week, I'm going to teach you how to go in and surgically remove these cravings, desires, attachments. But even when I teach you what I'm going to teach you next week, it's not an instant solution. It's not going to solve in one day or 5 minutes or anything like this. So that's why you need the breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity on board. And that's why I've been teaching that for the last 3.5 months, to build up students to the point where now you're going to be learning other things, other tools and techniques. So the breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity is going to train the mind to let go, but there's other things too. So there's a point in time next week where I'm going to open up to these kinds of things, and you can share this with me, that you're noticing this craving, and I'll help you to understand how to put together a plan to actually solve this and almost surgically go in and remove it. But it's still going to take a concerted effort over a consistent long-term period to let it go. It's not going to be instantaneous. But in the meantime, keep doing what you're doing, because it's working and it's leading to improved results. Miriam says, thank you. It's encouraging, although it's an impermanent, pleasant feeling. Yes, the pleasant feelings that are conditional, they're impermanent. And that's why they're ultimately dissatisfying, right? And that's why the mind, having gotten so many pleasant feelings from its cravings, as it's starting to let those go, it's going to end up in the painful feelings. You can't get to enlightenment without experiencing some painful feelings, because the mind took on so many cravings throughout our life. As the mind's starting to let those go through training, it gets to this pain. It gets to this ickiness and this awkwardness and this loneliness and other discontent feelings. The way I describe this is, you've got to walk through the fire in order to appreciate the fresh air on the other side. So right now, what Brent and Miriam are describing, and maybe some of the others are experiencing this too, is you're standing in the middle of the fire. That's why it doesn't feel so good. You haven't gotten to the other side yet, where the fresh air is. And that's why staying dedicated and diligent to the practice and brightening up the mind will get you to the other side, where the mind's fully let go. But because we took on certain cravings throughout our life, now that we're letting them go and the mind is not getting what it wants, that's where the painful feelings are coming in. So the mind just hasn't fully let go yet. That's why it's experiencing that ickiness and that uncomfortableness. So Julie is asking a question here. One of the things they can still hook me is the political climate right now. It would be so easy to jump down someone's throat hearing their political comments. It's hard, but I have to breathe and remember that's not who I want to be. Yes, that's a very good reminder. And also remind yourself of impermanence, right? You have certain political views, certain political opinions. And because of impermanence, not everybody's going to have those same views and opinions. This is normal. But when the mind's craving permanence and it wants everybody to agree with you, or it wants everybody to have a certain view or opinion, as your mind does, when you hear someone's different view or opinion, it's going to be angry and frustrated or bitter or harsh or hostile, or, like you say, jump down someone's throat. So remind yourself, this is just impermanence. This is normal. Of course, other people have different views and opinions. If everybody had exactly the same view and opinion, wouldn't that be like a really boring world to live in? Right? This is the interesting thing about craving, desire, attachment, and how the mind craves permanence. It craves permanence, and that's what it really wants. But if everything was permanent, wouldn't that be the most boring world to live in? If every single human being was exactly the same? Or if Thailand was exactly the same as America, why would anybody ever be interested to come to Thailand? Or if Canada was exactly the same as America, or if Europe was exactly the same as South America, if everything was exactly the same, we would be so bored. So even though the mind craves this permanence, if it really actually got what it wanted, it would be bored, right? Because everything would be so vanilla and so the same. When we go out in the world and people look different, people smell different, people talk different, people express themselves differently, this is interesting, right? So really embrace impermanence and realize like, wow, this person does have a different political view than me. This is interesting. Let's talk about that. I would like to hear this interesting view or opinion that this person has. This is really interesting. But when there's craving in there and it wants everyone to agree with you, and of course there's ego with that too, where the mind thinks that I'm right and everyone else is wrong, then it doesn't like this, right? But if you can embrace impermanence and really enjoy it, like, wow, so wonderful that our world is different, then the mind can train it to be let go more readily in these situations. So this is a little thing to think about when you're experiencing different opinions and views coming your way, that of course these people have different opinions and views. That's just impermanence and that's normal. But if you're noticing the frustration coming up, redirect the mind, go outside for a walk, go do something else, right? That's what you would like to do. Don't stay in the situation when the discontentedness is arising. Okay, let me see if we have any questions on YouTube or Facebook. Looks like we have some coming in on Facebook. Mayu Lee asks, the more I practice, the more I see there's nothing to life and no longer want to be trapped in the cycle of rebirth, which motivate me even more to get to enlightenment. I feel like I'm preparing for my death. That's what it can feel like as your mind's letting go, because you're so used to holding on to these cravings, desires, attachments. The world can start looking very miserable to you. And that can be motivation to be able to get to enlightenment. But what you're experiencing, that's not enlightenment yet, as you know, Mayu Lee. By the time you get to enlightenment, you look out at the world and it's like, wow, this is a wonderful place. Like, I can really enjoy this. But being in the unenlightened state, it can feel quite miserable. It's kind of like looking out at the world through a dirty window, because the mind is polluted. It's got these taints and these defilements. So it's like looking out at the world through a dirty window and everything looks horrible. But what you're doing on this path is you're cleaning off your dirty window. So now you can look out at the world with clarity. And it's like, wow, this world looks so bright and this so radiant. But as you're cleaning the window, it's kind of smudged up. That's what Brent and Miriam are talking about. And that's kind of what you're talking about, Mayu Lee. You guys have all been practicing for a certain period of time. You've been cleaning this window, but it's got all these smudges on it. You can't quite see out clear because you haven't cleaned up the window 100% yet. So that's why when you look outside, it looks kind of miserable still. But when you get this window perfectly clean, boy, does the world look wonderful, and you can go out into the world and do amazing things. And of course, you're still going to see the suffering and the grief and the despair in other people, but your mind will be brightened up. So it just needs to be cleaned up and get more pollution out of the mind so that you can get to the point where you can look out of the window more clearly. David is saying here, the you that I am not, what is the you that is? What is the you? There is no you. That's what the Buddha describes, is that there is no you there, that there is nothing that you can identify as being who you are as a person. But the mind's going to keep grasping and grabbing and looking for something to grab onto, and that's the problem. And that's what you need to strip away and peel away. Okay, I don't see any questions in YouTube. And let's see. Yeah, I don't see any more in Zoom either. So what I'm going to do is just end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. I appreciate that you've taken some time to learn and practice today. As you see, there's some impermanence here that I have a different background. I'm in a completely different city than I'm normally in. So there's some impermanence with your teacher, right? Your teacher is not permanent. They're not going to be in the same exact location all the time. And maybe there's going to be a technical challenge at some point where I can't even teach. So there's going to be impermanence here as well. So the mind needs to learn to not even cling to these kinds of things as well. So I'd like to thank you all for deciding that today's a day you'd like to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha, and at the same time invite you to continue to learn and grow and develop by reading the book, Volume 1. You're going to need to read each individual chapter. And then remember, next week, Chapter 13, we're going to dive in to something that I'm going to teach you. It's probably going to take me maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes to teach it to you, but then we're going to have a class discussion to really help you fully understand this so that you can then get your arms around it and start implementing it. It's going to help you to identify your attachments and then surgically go in and remove them. So this is chapter 13. So if you're reading the book in coming to classes, you'll get all the wisdom that you need to be able to understand the teachings, because there's certain things in the book that aren't in the classes, and there's certain things in the classes that aren't in the book. So the combination of the two will fully help you. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be teaching meditation like I typically do, or at least guiding you in meditation, and then opening up to any and all questions that you'd like to ask. So thank you all for joining. And as you need help, feel free to reach out. I'm here to help you guys. You can reach out by email, by private message. You can schedule appointments with me. You can ask questions in class. You can post on our Facebook group. These are all options for you to get help. So have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.